Hi, and welcome back to the Fresh Fiction Podcast. My name is Gwen Reyes, and I am your new best friend and hostess on this new book journey that we are all going on together. I'm so excited to be back with you guys again this week and interviewing an author that I just had a blast talking with. Susan Mae Warren is the author of the Montana Rescue series, and Stormfront, which came out back in May, was the fifth in that series. And guys, let me tell you, my interview with Susan was just such a delight. We actually had to cut a little bit of the interview because we ended up talking for around 40 minutes, and a lot of it was about the weather, which is very fascinating because she lives in Minneapolis and I live in Texas, so our temperatures are a little bit different. So that was always really funny to talk to different people from all over the country about their climate and everything, because it's just fascinating to me. I know I'm one of those boring people that likes to talk about the weather. I'm sorry, do not sue me. But we had such a great chat about Stormfront, which, guys, let me just read this little blurb about this book. It was just so much fun. A tornado has destroyed a small Minnesota community, and among the missing are not only a group of students, but peak rescue team leader Chet King. Ty Remington will stop at nothing to rescue his mentor, not even when the girl he loved and lost walks back into his life. But Brett needs his help more than he knows, despite her stubborn determination to push him away. And when he gets a second chance, loving her might just cost him more than he can imagine. So you can imagine also that this book has a lot of twists and turns in it, but also a really sweet heart and a romance at the center, which was just so much fun to read. I'm really thankful to Revell for setting up our interview and continuing to sponsor this podcast. We couldn't do it without them, and we're so thankful to be partners in crime with REVELL and BETHANY HOUSE. And you can get Stormfront anywhere books are sold, on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble. You can go to Walmart, you can go to Costco. The book's available for you. Just try it out. It is so much fun. Like I've said multiple times. Can I say fun enough? I don't know. I think I've said it way too many times. But stick around, check out our interview with Susan Mae Warren. But before you do that, or after you do that, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and you know what? You're already here, so subscribe to our podcast so that you get a new update whenever we update our podcasts. We're rolling these out, these little mini episodes with these interviews, a lot, so you're going to probably see a few of these popping up sooner or later. So make sure you're subscribed so that you do not miss a thing. And, you know, if you really like us, make sure you're telling your friends. That really helps. And sharing us on your different social medias. And, you know, if you really feel inclined, write a comment. Tell me what you think. I'd really love to hear it and see what we can do better with the podcast and see what kind of authors you want us to interview. But until our next time, enjoy this chat that I had with Susan Mae Warren. About how you got started as a writer.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Oh, did you want me to answer that right now?
Sure, yeah, let's go for it.
Sorry.
When you're ready.
How did I get started as a writer? Okay, that's a great question. I was always the person that loved to read and loved to write. And when I was a little girl, I was one of those crazy people that would go to the library and check out more books than she could carry home on her backpack, right?
Uh-huh.
So it was like the backpack was full, and I was writing no-handed so I could like carry 4 more books, you know, and that sort of thing. And so anyway, I got the bug to write pretty early. I think I wrote my first novel when I was 14, actually.
Wow.
And it was about a horse and a cowboy and a cowgirl and true love and sunsets and the whole thing, and never got published or anything. But I kind of showed myself that I could do something like that. It wasn't very long, you know, it was a kid's book, but the point is that that's where I started to think, oh, I really like writing, and I maybe could do something with this. And so I went to college, I got an English degree, I excelled in the creative writing classes. But my dad was all like, you know, you need a job that actually pays money. So so I went into marketing, and that was my major. And I really loved advertising and marketing. It was a lot of fun. And I went on to be a creative director at a newspaper and just a lot of things like that. But then I went into missions, and my husband and I were sent over to Russia we lived there about 10 years. And while we were there, the nudge to write came back to me. And so what happened was that he was gone often in the evenings. And so after I put the kids to bed, we had 4 kids by this time, I would go and pursue that desire to write. And so I just started by writing. You know, I actually wrote 4 novels before anything got published. And the way I got published was that I turned in a novel that was I had turned in other novels, but I was living in Russia. It's like really hard to send a self-addressed stamped envelope to America from Russia, right? So, so that was a challenge. So anyway, we ended up, I ended up being able to submit something online, and Tyndale was having a contest at the time, and they were looking for novellas written in interesting situations and with happenstance meetings. And so I had just recently gotten locked in an elevator for about 2 hours, and I thought, what if there was someone I loved on the other side trying to get me out? So anyway, I came up with this story idea, and Tyndale loved it and published it, and I could not believe it. So that was about 4 years. It took me about 4 years from the time I started writing seriously to get to the day I got the phone call that they wanted to buy the book. So it was 4 years and 4 novels before I got published. And I did write a big, I started with like a 400-page historical tome about the history of Russia, which is really long.
How very Russian.
Yes, it was very, very large. And then, but I got a very nice rejection letter from Bethany House that said, why don't you write something shorter? So then I wrote a much shorter novel, and it kept getting shorter and shorter where they were like actually readable, and that was good. So it was a lot of hard work. I was living overseas at the time, so I didn't really know. I had learned about creative writing in college, but really you need to kind of throw everything out of your brain when it comes to writing commercial fiction. College doesn't really teach you how to write creatively, in my opinion. They teach you how to explore ideas, and I think that's really important. But in terms of writing, what I would do is I would just open up a book and I would say, okay, what stands out to me, what is the characterization like, what's the plotting like, these sorts of things. And I would just analyze every book I had on the shelf, and after a while I started to get a hang of the characterization and building a character and building a world and this sort of thing, and kind of came up with a formula, so to speak, on how to get the story on the page. And once I understood that, then I could actually go and reproduce stories.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you bring up the idea that, when you go and people spend all this money and this energy and this time learning how to be creative writers in schools, and then, at the end of the day, you have to be able to practice that, and that's the only way that you can actually learn to take the tips that they give you and actualize it.
Absolutely. It's college is great. There's a lot of really good purposes for college. Teaching you to do sort of your profession when you get out isn't maybe the main purpose of college. And so, but I didn't really know I was going to be a writer until I actually sat down. I learned so much about writing. I did a lot of writing in advertising and marketing, obviously, copywriting and this sort of thing. But when it came to actually writing a novel, what taught me was actually doing a lot of reading. I still read all the time. I read a couple books a week, actually. And so, I'm constantly reading, and then I'm constantly analyzing, why does this work? Why didn't it work? I analyze movies, and having craft groups and partners that you talk to about story, not necessarily exchanging your manuscripts, but rather just talking about what works and what doesn't, and why, and how to, create emotion on the page, and sort of thing. So kind of breaking it down and analyzing it is really where you're going to learn a lot of your technique. And then, of course, just writing. You just got to write a lot. Yeah. And you finally find your voice. So, yeah, that's how I got started. And I have kind of continued that mantra of just read, analyze, learn, write.
Did you find that your experience in working in marketing and advertising, do you use those sort of the skills that you got from that every day as a writer and marketing your product?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's always about finding the audience, finding the right emotion. What does your audience need and want? What are they looking for? How do you fulfill that? I ask myself that as a storyteller all the time. What is my audience looking for? And so a lot of times when I start a book, I'll say, what are the things in this book that my audience wants? It's not just adventure. It's about the plot. It's about the kind of character. If I have a good tagline, the tagline has to fulfill or the content has to fulfill the tagline. So meaning, if it's a story about a woman who goes missing and the man that she loves goes to rescue her, obviously I need to have, well, why is he going to rescue her? What's their backstory? What's the angst between them? This sort of thing. And so I'm always asking myself, what emotions am I going to evoke in this story, and how am I going to fit the needs of my readers in this story? And so it's always, yes, that's always there. And then of course in my marketing, of course I make my memes and my tweets and my posts and my newsletters all cater towards the needs of my audience.
Absolutely. So speaking of audience and the stories that you write, this is the Montana Rescue series. That's your, is it your 4th series? Is that correct?
Yeah, let's see. I'm on to, no, it's more than that. I'm on to 60-some books now. So 60, let's see. Okay. Yeah, so I wrote the Deep Haven Collection, which had 6 books. I wrote the Christensen Family series. I wrote the P.J. Sugar series, the Josie series. I wrote a Mission Russia series, which was like a thriller series, and that had like 6. I had the Noble Legacy, which is a Montana cowboy series. I had, Team Hope, which was sort of a springboard off into this series. It was like my first search and rescue series, and then Montana Rescue became my most recent one. I had a couple of side series about smoke jumpers and some different things like that. So lots of different series, but I would say all of them have strong romance with a little bit of adventure or suspense in them. Sometimes I veer more towards the shoot 'em up cowboys and robbers and that sort of thing, suspense. But other times I have or international intrigue. I'll do some of those. Sometimes the suspense is you're falling off a mountain and somebody needs to rescue you. That kind of suspense. So it kind of goes back and forth what I'm working on, and sometimes I combine the two. So but I really enjoy having a strong romance with elements of suspense in it. I don't write suspense first then romance. I write romance first then suspense. And so there's people that flip it. Like Terry Blackstock would definitely write suspense first and then a little romance. So I'm more of the romance and then throw in the suspense.
That's so interesting that you kind of had that action adventure touch on all of the books. And was that always like when you started writing back in Russia, was that always your intention was to have this action adventure sort of vibe to it? Or did you just, because you said you wrote historical before as well,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've written historicals too. I think that that's my personality. So I'm a very action adventure girl. I like, I do a lot of outdoorsy things. I, whitewater canoe, and I climb and I ski and I scuba dive. I do stuff like that. So I enjoy. Goodness. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and so I enjoy putting those true life experiences into my stories because I just feel like they add dimension to people's lives that maybe they don't normally get. So I like to put that in, and I like my books to be a little bit different than the usual, FBI spy intrigue stories. They need to have some sort of adventure element to them. So I guess that's just sort of my bent. I didn't necessarily plan to put that in. It just sort of became organic. I'm thinking even to one of my first series that I ever wrote was a book called In Sheep's Clothing, and it was a thriller set in Russia. Well, the second book in that series was also a thriller set in Russia, but it was about a man who had to go into Siberia to rescue the woman he loves before she gets kicked out of the country. And so anyway, he has to go get her, and there's snowmobiles and there's ice and winter and falling off cliffs and all sorts of crazy stuff that happens. So it's sort of very early on it kind of navigated to that kind of storytelling.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's what I think is so interesting about your, especially with the Montana series and then hearing about this Russian one as well. It's like they're so different. Like it's something that you don't see especially in commercial fiction, but they're just so different. The situations and circumstances for the characters are different than what we see in a lot of romantic suspense.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I try very hard to find unique situations where it's like, it's not just a girl in jeopardy running away from a bad guy. It's a girl in jeopardy running away from a bad guy through the Glacier National Forest or Glacier National Park, where they jump into a river and then they have to outrun a grizzly bear, and while they're at it, they have to solve a mystery or something. It's like I like to try to have a little bit of a different bent, and although I do try to have the same kind of elements, strong heroes, smart heroines, action adventure. I don't have a lot of gratuitous violence in my stories. I have like realistic violence, I would say, but I don't have like I don't have like torture scenes or something like that, you know. And so I don't like that kind of stuff, so I don't write it. But I try to give my readers what they're looking for in a Susan Mae Warren book, but maybe change it up so that the scenery is a little different, that the situations are very organic to the characters, and yet something that they wouldn't normally see in a regular suspense.
So we need to talk about Troubled Waters. It's the fourth in the Montana Rescue series. Can you give listeners a little bit just about what the whole Montana Rescue series is, and then we'll talk a little bit also about Troubled Waters.
Absolutely. So Montana Rescue birthed out of my love of watching Chicago Fire. And I love Chicago Fire. And I was like, what if I took these people and I put them in Montana, and I put on cowboy boots, and I made them, rescue people in Glacier National Park? Because I'd been to Glacier a lot, and I love it there, and I thought, oh, this could be an interesting situation. And then I thought, well, let's throw a little Deep Haven in there, a little small town. We'll make a little small town out of it. And I actually did some research and based the story off of a private search and rescue team that's out there in Montana. So that was really fun to kind of put it together. And then I created this, even before I started the series, I knew the arc, I knew what was going to happen in the series with all the different players. And so I started this. So the backbone of the series is this mystery where this woman has gone missing, and she went missing when she was 18 years old, and she's the niece of Ian Shaw, who's the billionaire who has created this private rescue team. And the very first book is a free prequel called If Ever I Would Leave You, and it's about Ian and his secretary Sierra, who they have an on-again, off-again kind of romance crush thing that's kind of unrequited, and it's their story against the backdrop of Esme going missing. So we leave that's a prequel free igniter to the series, right? So we end that. The reason I'm telling you this is because the Troubled Waters picks up Ian and Sierra's story a couple of years later. Okay. So what happens is that in the first book, Ian and Sierra they have like I said, on-again, off-again romance. Esme goes missing, and then we open up the series 3 years later, and something has surfaced, a clue has surfaced in the first book that suggests that Esme may still be alive. And so this ignites the relationship between Ian and Sierra in some ways, but also causes problems. And so anyway, fast forward to book 4, we've seen different relationships develop in the team in different situations, and now it's finally time for Ian and Sierra to face the music. It's the fish or cut bait, people. So what's happening is that that story really birthed from this line in my head where Sierra said, I wouldn't date him if he was the only man on a desert island. And I said, oh, let's just try that out. And so I kind of called her bluff there. So what I did is I really wanted to move all the stories up to date had taken place in Glacier National Park, and I thought, let's just get out of Glacier a little bit and go someplace warm.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we went to the Caribbean and for part of the story, and Ian has a boat, and for different reasons, Sierra uses the boat as a fundraising tool because they have to raise some money, and Ian, because he is wanting to kind of make sure that none of his buddies, so he invites his friends onto this boat, and he doesn't want any of them. They all think Sierra's really awesome and hot, and they want to date her, and so he doesn't want that to happen. So he goes on the ship with them, and she's not happy about that. And then, of course, bad things happen, as they normally do, and they find themselves stranded on a desert island. So it's kind of a fun story. It's what happens when sort of your bluff gets called, and what is she going to do about this? And Ian finally has a chance to get her face to face, and so we just kind of have to wait and see what happens. So it's a very fun story, very fun. It's so there are stories that I write for my readers, and then there are stories that I write that are like kickoff, that are just like in my head, that are great stories that I think will ignite my readers' interest, but I'm not sure, right? So this is a reader favorite. This one here is like, people have been waiting for Ian Ian and Sierra, when I said it was their story, we just did. People were so thrilled to finally get it. So it is. I mean, it's a great story, even if you haven't read the rest of the books. But for those that have read the books, they're really going to love this story, and so that's really fun. So yeah.
Well, it's always good to kind of tap into those fan favorites.
Yeah. I always, every once in a while, I just pick characters that I know fans are like waiting to hear from, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's their story. So the next one is also a great story, Stormfront. It comes out in May, but that one's a little different. It's featuring characters that we haven't met as well, and so but people are really gonna love the characters in that one, so it's gonna be fun. But yeah, so I just kind of have to always remember, what does my reader want, and sometimes they want something fresh, sometimes they want older characters that they know and love. So this is that one.
Have you been, since Troubled Waters has been out since January, have you been hearing from fans and readers if they're loving it?
Yes, it's been so much fun. I've gotten so many letters. Oh, this is my favorite one. This has been worth the wait. I just love it. I love the tropical setting. Just really, it's been an outpouring of really good response. So I'm really excited. And I'm really excited because I've already written the finale book, which is number 6. It comes out in December. And that would be a reader, fan favorite too. And so it's about the love, it's about the relationship that's been happening behind the scenes throughout the whole series between a guy named Pete and a lady named Jess, and it's their story. So that was kind of fun to write. So lots of good stuff coming up.
That's awesome. Well, and so with book 6 being done in December, are you putting the Montana Rescue series aside for a while? Or are you thinking about coming back?
Well, we've got some things in the works. Let me put it this way: you won't see the last of these guys.
Okay.
So we will see our favorite rescuers in the future.
That's awesome. It's very exciting. I know readers will, especially when you've had so many books, to be able to connect with readers. They know that's a big deal, that they love to be able to spend time with you in whatever characters you're going to give them.
Well, I really enjoy getting feedback from readers. And, I've had a lot of people, even in this book, Troubled Waters, there's a character named Dex. And more than one person has written to me and said, please give us a Dex book, because he's a great character. So I love hearing from my readers, because it does help me to know what do they like, what do I need to look at, what do I need to steer clear of, this sort of thing. But I love to give readers what they want. So it's always great to kind of know what direction to head in.
Absolutely. Well, and I thought we're almost done. Our last question has to do with one of the things that we do at this podcast is we're very interested in knowing what people are reading and watching and listening to. And you've already mentioned that you're an avid reader and you also love to dissect movies and TV shows. So now I'm curious what you've been able to, what's been very interesting and that you've enjoyed reading and watching and listening to recently.
Okay, so let's see here. So I just binge watched all of The Brave, which is a CBC, maybe NBC show. I don't remember what channel it's on, but anyway, it came out this year, and it's about a group of Americans or soldiers. I don't know. I guess they're not Americans, but anyway, the point is that they're international heroes that go and rescue people. So I love that one. So that's called The Brave. I'm into this SEAL Team, which is a show that's on every week. I think I love that one. Mm-hmm. I've just finished. I'm all caught up with Ronnie Kendig, but I love her books, so I'm constantly reading everything she's got new out. She just had a Christmas novella that came out, so I downloaded that and read that. Mm-hmm. And then for my crazy vacation books that I read, I just devoured them. I just finished the Lunar Chronicles, which is a dystopian YA series, which I know is like, what? But it was so good and pretty clean, and very clean actually, and I really liked it. So I like to vary my reading. I do read a lot of sort of military search and rescue. I just also read a nonfiction memoir about a paratrooper, which was really, really interesting. Pararescue jumper, that's what it was. So that was really interesting. So I'm reading all sorts of interesting things, but yes, and I just saw the Black Panther, which I thought was great.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was great too.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm a very action adventure kind of girl, but every once in a while I go crazy and I'm like, I think I'll just download this dystopian YA book and read this and read everything about it. And and I devoured all 4 books in 2 weeks. So
yeah, anyway. I can definitely see the trend with you is very much you want your stories to be moving. You want that action. You want your attention grabbed for the entire length of time.
Yes, yes, and that's what I like to read, and that's what I like to give my readers, is that whole idea of that I cannot put this book down, I must keep reading. So that's what I like to give them.
You get a lot of people who start reading at 7 p.m. and then don't go to sleep until 4 a.m.
And then I wake up to like an email. I'm really mad at you, but it was a great book, but I'm really tired now. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but thank you. So
that's
it's always fun.
Well, Susan, where can listeners find more information about you?
You know what? They can always go to my website, SusanMaeWarren.com, and I've got a free book on there and all sorts of sneak peeks. And I give away books all the time. When people sign up for my newsletter, I think I give away 5 books every time we put a newsletter out. So you might get a free book. It's always fun.
Awesome. Well, Susan Mae Warren, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I hope that you get a little bit warmer.
Thank you.
Have a cup of tea. That always helps me. I'm a very cold-natured person.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.